Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. We're continuing on with our solo playthrough of War of the Ring. This is phase 1 where we're going to recover our dice and draw action event cards. Free peoples have one die placed into the Hunt for the Ring box. That'll force the shadow player to place at least one die there during the turn. Free peoples will recover 4 dice plus the Galadriel special die. Shadow player will recover a total of 9 action dice plus a faction die. Free peoples player draws Book of Marzabul, Wizard's Staff, and the Union of All Our Strength. That will give the free peoples a total of 6 standard cards, and that'll give them a total of 5 faction cards, so we're going to have to discard a faction card. And I think we're going to discard this Union of All Our Strength card. We'll keep the faction cards we have. Shadow player will draw his cards. He'll have a total of 5 standard cards and a total of 3 faction events. Phase 2 is our fellowship phase, and the fellowship progress is at 2. Corruption is at 4. Fellowship is currently occupying Parth Celebrant, and the Witch King is in the same space as them. Strider will remain as the guide. Phase 3 is Hunt Allocation. We'll make a roll on table A. Roll is a 5, and that means that the shadow player is going to place 1 die in the hunt box. Phase 4 is the faction event roll. We'll start with the free peoples. And they roll a total of a Will of the West, 2 muster, an event die, and unfortunately an eye from Galadriel. Now that is a removed symbol on that, but Gandalf the White is not in play yet, so that will not be active yet. But we will place that into the hunt box, and that'll be the second die that's there. Shadow player will make his roll, and we roll another eye. That's going to be placed in the box. That's the third eye. They have a total of 5 muster die, 2 event dice, and 1 character die. All right. We'll move on to phase 5. That's the action resolution phase, and the free peoples are going to play a Will of the West die, and they're going to bring into play Gandalf the White. And it says if Gandalf the Grey is on the map, replace him. Otherwise, place Gandalf the White in Fangorn or in an elven stronghold controlled by the free peoples, even if it is under siege. All right. We're going to place Gandalf the White in Fangorn Forest, and he is going to award the free peoples an extra action dice. We'll put that into their dice pool. Shadow player is up next, and we'll have a roll on Sauron's gaze table. Roll is a 7, and that's going to be Mordor, and the secondary objective for that is Minas Tirith. Shadow player is going to play a character die, and we're going to activate the first army to assault Minas Tirith. The Gondorians have 1 leader, an elite, and 3 regulars. Shadow has 2 Nazgul, 3 elites, and 6 regulars. Free peoples are going to play the combat card Sudden Strike. Play if a free people's leader or a companion is in the battle. Before the combat roll an additional attack using a number of dice equal to your leadership, up to a maximum of 5, and apply the results immediately. Now we'll roll to determine if the shadow player will be using a combat die. He has a total of 5 standard cards, so a roll of less than 5 will attempt him to play a card. Here's the roll. Rolls a 6, so he will not be playing a combat card. Now we'll be determining the combat strength of each side. We have 4 units for the Gondorians, so they'll get 4 dice, and the Shadow player will be using a total of 5 combat dice. Now we'll be determining our leadership values. The Gondorians have 1 leader point, and the Shadow player has 2 Nazgul, so they'll have a total of 2 for leadership. We'll begin by making that sudden strike for the Free Peoples. They have a leadership value of 1. They'll be rolling 1 dice. On a 5 or 6, they'll inflict an instant hit. Here's the roll. Rolls a 5, so that is successful. And the Shadow player is going to eliminate 1 regular. That won't change their combat ability. They'll still have a total of 5. Now we'll make our combat roll. The Gondorians will hit on a 5 or 6, and the Shadow player will only hit on a 6. Here's the roll. All right. It looks like just 1 hit from the Gondorians. Shadow player has no hits. They're going to exercise their re-roll, so they're going to be able to roll 1 die. And they rolled a 2, that's a miss. And the Shadow player will get 2 re-rolls, so we'll have him re-roll 2. He's looking for 6s. And he has nothing. So, in this case, Gondorians have done 1 damage to the Shadow player. He's going to use the 1 regular to absorb that. And now he has to decide if he's going to continue the battle. If he wants to continue the battle, he will have to degrade one of his elite units to a regular, and he'll do that. He's going to degrade this elite down to a regular, and he's going to continue the battle. Free Peoples have no option as they're in a siege, so they will have to stick it out. So we'll start a new round of combat. The Free Peoples are going to play the combat card Faithful Strike. Play if the Free People's leader or companion is in the battle. If your leader reroll scores 1 hit, additionally eliminate a Nazgul if present. If the reroll scores 2 or more hits, you can eliminate a minion if present instead of a Nazgul. All right, now we're going to roll to see if the Shadow player will play a combat card. He has 5 standard cards. He'll need to roll less than a 5. And here's the roll. Rolls a 1, so he will be playing a combat card. We've shuffled his available cards, and we're going to play these one at a time and see which, if any, are applicable. First one is Dread and Despair. Play if the total Nazgul leadership is 1 or more. Before the combat roll, forfeit 1 or more points of Nazgul leadership. During his combat roll, the Free People's player rolls 1 combat die less, to a minimum of 1 for every point you have chosen to forfeit. Well, that is a viable card, and they're going to play that. The Shadow player's leadership value is 2. So I think what they'll do is they're going to surrender 1 point of leadership, and that will remove 1 die from the Free People's dice pool. So they'll be rolling a total of 3 dice instead of 4. Now we'll make our combat roll. Free Peoples will be rolling 3 dice due to the Dread and Despair card, and the Shadow player will be rolling a total of 5. Okay, here is the roll. All right. Free Peoples have done a total of 2 hits. Shadow player has only 1 hit. Now we'll make our leader rerolls. The Free Peoples will get 1 reroll, and the Shadow player will get 1 reroll. Okay, here we go. And neither side scored an additional hit, so we have to take out our casualties. The Shadow player inflicted 1 hit, so we'll have 1 Gondorian regular removed. Free Peoples inflicted 2 hits, and they will remove 2 regulars. Shadow players decided to continue the battle, so we will have to replace one of those elites with a regular. Their combat strength will be 5 at this point, and the Free Peoples have a combat strength of 3. The Shadow players' leadership value is 2. We'll mark them with 2 leadership value. And the Free Peoples remain at 1. Now we are going to decide if there's going to be some combat cards played. Free Peoples don't have any combat cards that would apply in this case, and we'll make a roll to see if the Shadow player can. On a roll of a 3 or less, he will be playing a combat card. Here's the roll. Rolls a 1, so he will attempt to play a combat card. And the first card is They Are Terrible. Play if the total Nazgul leadership is 1 or more. Subtract 1 from your total Nazgul leadership to add 1 to all dice on your leader reroll. Well, that's technically playable, so they will play that card. And it says subtract 1 from your total Nazgul leadership to add 1, so that'll reduce their Nazgul leadership to 1. All right. And here's the combat roll. All right. The Free Peoples scored a total of 1 hit. Shadow player scored 1 hit also. Now we're going to take care of our rerolls. Free Peoples player can reroll 1 die. And that is a miss, so they have to have a total of 1 hit. Shadow player can reroll 1, and they're going to add 1 now to their leader reroll. And they scored a hit, so they've got a total of 2 hits, and the Free Peoples have 1. So, Free Peoples player is going to, I think they'll degrade their elite unit to absorb 1 of the hits, and they'll take a regular as the other one. That'll preserve them to have 2 combat dice at least. And the Shadow player is going to lose 1 regular in the process, and I think they're going to push the assault and continue. In order to do that, they'll have to degrade their elite unit down to a regular. That'll give them a combat strength of 4. And their leadership value is currently at 2, and 1 for the Free Peoples. Free Peoples player has no combat cards that they can play, and will determine whether or not the Shadow player will be playing 1. He has 3 cards, so the roll of a 1 or 2 would play a combat card. Roll a 4, so no combat cards will be played for the Shadow player. Combat strength is 2, so 2 dice for the Gondorians and 4 dice for the Shadow player. We'll make that roll and then do our leader rerolls. Free Peoples player has no hits. The Shadow player has a total of 1 currently. We'll make our leader rerolls now. Free Peoples ended up getting 1 hit, and Shadow player did not get any additional, so each side has 1 damage they need to absorb. Not much choice, 1 for the Gondorians and 1 for the Shadow player, and that will have to bring the battle to a close. The Shadow player has no more elite units to degrade to continue the battle, but they've whittled them down to 1 Gondorian regular and a leader. All right, the Free Peoples are going to use a muster die, and they're going to recruit. And they're going to recruit a regular in Dal Amroth and a leader in Lamden. Shadow player's up next. We'll make a roll on the gaze table. Roll is a 4, and that's going to be Moria and Dal Guldur. Their target is going to be Lorien. Shadow player is going to use a muster die, and they're going to recruit. And they're going to recruit an elite unit in Dal Guldur. Free People's player are up next. They're going to use an event die, and they are going to play the card File of Galadriel. The File of Galadriel's special hunt tile is now in play. Add the tile to the hunt pool when the Fellowship is on the Mordor track, and that is a -2 damage, so they would recover 2 health if that tile is pulled. So we'll add that off to the side, and we'll put that into the hunt bag when they reach the Cracks of Doom. Shadow player's up again, and he'll make a roll on the table. Roll is a 2, and that's going to be Angmar or Ruin. All right. I think the Shadow player is going to play a muster die, and they're going to do some recruiting, and they're going to bring in a Easterling elite unit in East Rune. Free People's player would be up next. They have 1 muster die remaining, but I think they're going to pass and allow the Shadow player to take a turn, and we can react to what they do. So we'll make a roll on the gaze table and see where his attention is turned. Roll is an 8, and that's going to be Umbar and Harad. Shadow player is going to play an event die, and they're going to play the event Horde from the East. Play if the Southron and Easterlings are at war. Recruit 5 Southron and Easterling regular units in a free region inside the Southron and Easterlings nation. This region must be adjacent to the eastern edge of the map. All right, but they're going to recruit those then in Far Harad. We're going to place 5 regulars there, and that is attached to the east end of the board. So we'll place 5 regulars there, and that will complete that action. The Palantir of Orthanc is still active, and that will allow us to draw another event card from either one of the decks. And we're going to take a strategy card. And now it's the Free People's turn. They have 1 muster die remaining, and they're going to play that muster die, and they are going to recruit. And they're going to place an elite unit in Dal Amroth. Shadow player has 4 dice remaining, none for the Fellowship, and we'll make a roll on the gaze table. Roll is a 10, and that's going to be Mordor. And the target is Minas Tirith. Shadow player is going to use a muster die, and he's going to do some recruiting. And he is going to recruit 2 regulars, 1 in Minas Morgul and 1 in Morannon. Shadow player has 3 dice remaining. He's going to make a roll on the gaze table. Roll is a 7, and that's Mordor. Target is Minas Tirith. Shadow player is going to use a muster die, and he's going to recruit, and we're going to use the Broods of Shelob, and that will allow them to recruit 1 spider in Dal Guldur and 1 in Minas Morgul. So we'll place those accordingly. 1 in Minas Morgul and 1 in Dal Guldur. Shadow player has 2 action dice left, and we'll make a roll. The roll is an 11, and that is Factions or the Hunt. The notes there reads, activate or reinforce a faction, if possible. Otherwise, play a faction event or use a faction die to best effect. If this is not possible, consider the result to be the hunt. Shadow player is going to play an event die, and they're going to play the card called the Craft of Shelob. Move all spiders up to 2 regions. If the Shelob's Lair special hunt tile has not entered play, it is now in play. Add the tile to the hunt pool when the Fellowship is on the Mordor track. All right, So we played a faction card to fulfill that function on the gaze table, and all the spiders now can move 2 spaces. So we're going to have the one in Dol Guldur move 2 spaces into Parth Celebrant. This spider will enter the army with Minas Tirith, and the one in Minas Morgul will move 2 spaces to Osgiliath. All right. And we're going to add that Shelob's Lair tile and put that into the pool when the time comes, when they reach the Cracks of Doom. Shadow player has one last die available, and that is a muster die, and they are going to recruit. They're going to recruit 1 regular in Minas Morgul and 1 regular in Dol Guldur, and that will end the Phase 5. Phase 6 is our victory check, and the Shadow player still has 1, and the Free Peoples have 2, so we'll begin another round. All right, we're at Phase 1, where we're going to recover our dice. The Shadow player is not required to keep any dice into the hunt box because the Fellowship did not advance during the last turn. They are going to gain 5 action dice now, Free Peoples and Galadriel's die. Shadow player is going to have a total of 9 dice along with the faction die. Free Peoples player draws You Know the Way There, Thranduil's Archers, and Wraiths of Fear. This will give the Shadow player, or Free Peoples player, a total of 5 standard cards, but they'll also have 5 of the faction cards, so we'll have to discard 1 of the faction cards. And they are going to discard the Wraiths of Fear card, and we'll keep the other faction cards that we have. Shadow player will draw his cards. He'll have a total of 5 standard cards and 3 faction cards. Fellowship phase, we have Strider as the guide. The Fellowship track is at 2 with 4 corruption, and the Fellowship is still in Parth Celebrant. Phase 3 is the hunt allocation. We'll make the roll. Shadow player rolls a 9. That means they're going to place 2 dice in the hunt box. Phase 4 is the action roll. Here's the Free Peoples. And they rolled an event die, 2 muster army, a character die, another character die, and unfortunately another eye. And this time Gandalf the White is active, so after this round, this die is going to be removed from play. It has the remove symbol on it, so after its effects are used during the turn, we will have to discard the die, unfortunately. That'll be placed in the hunt box. Here's the Shadow player's roll. And they rolled an eye. That'll be placed in the box. That's the 4th eye in there for this round. They have a faction die, 2 muster army, an event, and 2 army, and a character die. Free Peoples player is up first. They're going to use an event die, and they're going to play the card You Know the Way There. Add 2 Smeagol tiles to the hunt pool. All right, we'll do that. So we'll place those 2 Smeagol tiles into the hunt bag and give that a shuffle, and that's good to go. Shadow player is up next, and he'll roll on the gaze table. The roll is a 7, and that's going to be Mordor, and the objective is Minas Tirith. Shadow player is going to use a event die, and they're going to play the card The Shadow Lengthens. Move 2 shadow armies up to 2 regions. Each movement must end in a region already occupied by another shadow army that must not be under siege. The regions must be free for the purposes of army movement, and no shadow units may be picked up or dropped along the way, other than possibly splitting the army initially. All right, so we've got 2 movements and they can go up to 2 spaces. First one we're going to do is this group here in Dagerlod. We'll move that 2 spaces to South Ithilien, where there is an existing army there. And the next army we'll move will be from Minas Morgul into South Ithilien. And that will end the round, or move. Free Peoples are going to play the Muster Army die as a muster, and they'll play the event card, Thranduil's Archers. Recruit 1 elven unit, regular or elite, in the Woodland Realm. Then draw 1 strategy event card. We'll place a elven elite in the Woodland Realm, and then we're going to draw a strategy event card. Strategy event is the red arrow. Play if the Gondor nation is active. Advance the Rohan nation 1 step in the political track, then recruit 1 Rohan unit, regular or elite, and 1 Rohan leader in Edoras. Okay, we'll add that to our total. Shadow player is up next, and he'll make a roll on the gaze table. Rolls a 4, and that's Moria Dal Guldur. Shadow player will use an army die, and we're going to move armies. And I think what we'll do is we'll move this grouping into Dimril Dale, and these armies into South Anduin Vale. We'll leave 1 behind as a garrison. And the Free Peoples player is going to use a muster army die. They're going to play that as a muster, and they're going to bring in a faction. And they will enter the Ents of Fanghorn. That reads, if Saruman is in play and a companion or the fellowship is in Fanghorn, use 1 muster or recruit faction die to bring the Ents into play. So that's what we're going to do. And we begin by starting setup is to place 2 in Fanghorn. So we're going to place 2 Ents in Fanghorn Forest. And that is also going to give us faction die that we'll be able to roll next turn. So we'll be adding the Free Peoples faction die to their dice pool, and that'll be used next turn. Shadow player is up next, and he'll make his roll on the gaze table. Here's the roll. Roll is an 8, and that's Umbar and Harad. Shadow player is going to use an army die, and they are going to activate this force that is in Pelagar, and they're going to attack Lamden. The Gondorians have 2 leaders, 1 elite, and 4 regulars. The Southrons have 4 Corsairs with 2 Nazgul, 2 elites, and a total of 3 regulars. Free Peoples will decline to play a card at this time, and we're going to make a roll to see if the Shadow player will be using combat die. He has a total of 4 cards, so on a roll of 3 or less, he will attempt to play a combat card. Here's the roll. Roll is a 6, so he will not be playing a card. And now we're going to calculate our leadership values. The Gondorians will have a total of 2 leaders, and the Shadow player will also have a value of 2 leadership. Both sides have a combat strength of 5, and they're attacking the town of Lamden. The town will offer no defensive benefits to the defender. So we're going to make our roll, and then leader rerolls. Here is the roll. All right, both sides are going to hit on a 5 or 6. So we've got 2 successes for the Free Peoples and 2 successes for the Shadow player. And now we're going to make our leader rerolls. Each team is going to get 2 rerolls. Here's the roll. And the Free Peoples have a total of 4 hits now. That was a 5. and the shadow player has a total of 3 hits. All right, we're going to take casualties. Now the shadow player is going to have to take 4 casualties, so I think they're going to lose an elite. And I guess both elites are going to get taken out. That'll be the 4 points. And the free peoples will have to take a total of 3. And I think they'll lose an elite and 1 regular. All right. And I think the shadow player is going to halt their attack, and they'll move back into their safety of Pelagar. Free People's player is up next, and they're going to play a character die, and they're going to move companions. And they're going to begin by moving Gandalf and Merry. Now, Hobbit and can be accompanying Gandalf the White, and they have a movement up to 4 movement points because of Shadowfax. And they're going to move through West Emnet into Edoras. Legolas and Boromir have a movement value of 2, and they're going to move 2 spaces through East Emnet into the Druiden Forest. All right. Shadow player is up next, and he's going to roll on the gaze table. His roll is a 6, and that's Moria Dal Guldur. Shadow player is going to use a muster army die, and they're going to play that as an army die, and they're going to move 2 armies. This group is going to reinforce the 2nd army in the Siege of Lorien, and this army will move into Parth Celebrant. That will help to get a reroll for any hunt rolls, and they'll still be able to move into Lorien from that location. So that looks good. And that's going to place a total of 3 Nazgul, 8 regulars, and 1 elite in Lorien, in that 2nd army. Free People's players up next. They have 1 character die remaining, and they're going to pass. That will allow the shadow player to take the next action. I'll have him roll on the table. He rolls a 6, and that is Moria Dal Guldur again. Shadow player is going to use a character action die, and they're going to activate the 2nd army in Lorien and continue the assault on the fortifications. The elves will be defending with Galadriel and 1 leader, 4 elites, and 1 regular. The attack is going to be conducted by 3 Nazgul, 1 elite, and 8 Sauron regulars. Free People's player are going to play the combat card Brave Stand. Play if a companion is in the battle. We have Galadriel. Shadow player rolls 1 less die in his combat roll for each companion present to a minimum of 1. Right. Shadow player has a total of 4 regular faction cards. They'll make a roll. On a 3 or less, they'll play a combat card. Rolls a 5, so they will not play a card. Free People's player will be rolling 5 combat dice, and they'll have a total of 3 rerolls. 2 for Galadriel, she has a leadership of 2, and 1 for the Elven leader. Shadow player also has 3 points of leadership for the 3 Nazgul, so they'll be entitled to 3 rerolls as well. All right, we'll roll the die. Shadow player will only be rolling 4 dice because of that Brave Stand card. Okay, here is the roll. All right, the Shadow player did 1 hit. The Free People's player has 1 hit as well. Now we're going to make our leader rerolls. Each side is entitled to 3 reroll dice. And the Shadow player did quite well. He hits on 6s. He has a total of 3. Free Peoples only have 2. And that is going to be the end of the combat. We have to take casualties now. So I think the elves are going to take one elite and one regular, and the shadow player is going to take two regulars. Shadow player is going to continue the assault, so they are going to exchange their elite for a regular, and the elves have no choice but to continue to defend inside the fortress of Lorien. Okay, we're going to get ready for our next round. The Free Peoples have no card to play, so the shadow player is going to roll and see if they are going to play a combat card. We have 4 cards, 4 standard events, so on a roll of 3 or less, they'll play one. He rolled a 2, so they're going to be playing a combat card. We'll reveal these one at a time and find the first one that is applicable. Fear of their masters. Play if a shadow minion is in the battle. Nope, we don't have a minion in this battle. Next one is Foul Stench. Play if the total Nazgul leadership is 1 or more. If the Nazgul leadership equals or exceeds the total Free People's leadership, the Free People's leader reroll is canceled. And nope, they won't be able to do that, so try the next one. Swarm of Bats. Cancel the effects of the combat card played by the Free People's player. If the Free People's player did not play a card, add 1 to all dice on your leader reroll. That one would be applicable, so they're going to play Swarm of Bats. This time, the Free Peoples are going to be rolling only 3 combat dice, and the shadow player will be rolling 5 now, and each team is going to have 3 rerolls. So here is the roll. And we have 1 hit for each side. The Free Peoples will be able to reroll 2 dice, and the shadow player will be able to reroll 3 dice. Okay, we'll make those rerolls. Shadow hits on a 6 and the Free Peoples on a 5 or 6. Now, the card here, it says if the Free People's player did not play a card, add 1 to all dice on your leader reroll. So we're going to be +1 on these leader reroll dice for the shadow player. Here's the roll. All right, he has managed to get another hit. So did the Free Peoples. So each side is going to take 2 hits. Shadow player will take 2 regulars off the board, and the elves will have to take an elite unit. Now the shadow player can no longer continue the attack because he doesn't have any elite units there, so this is how the battle will end. And the Free People's player is up next. They have 1 character action die left, and I just cannot see them attempting to move the Fellowship with 4 eyes, and then they're going to be getting 2 rerolls, 1 for the Nazgul that's there and 1 for the army units that are there, so that just doesn't seem like a good play for us. I'm going to attempt to find something else to play. And we have a character die. I think what they're going to do is they're going to play any action die, in this case a character die, and they're going to use an Elven Ring. They'll use Elrond's Elven Ring, and that will allow us to discard the Palantir of Orthanc. So that card will be discarded, but unfortunately we'll have to give that Elven Ring to Shadow player. And that is the last of the faction dice for the Free Peoples. We'll move on to the Shadow player. Shadow player has 2 action dice left. We'll make a roll on the gaze table and see where Sauron's gaze is turned. The roll is a 3, and that's Rune and Angmar. And I think we're going to play a muster army die, and we're going to use that as an army die to move armies. First army is going to move this force in North Rune into the Vale of Carnan. And we have 1 more movement remaining. And I think we're going to move this force from South Ithilien into Osgiliath. All right, there's 1 die left now for the Shadow player, and that is a faction die. And the Shadow player is able to use his last die in any method he chooses. He's going to use the Recruit faction die, and he's going to bring in the Hillmen of Dunland. There are already 2 on that card. And that says, if Saruman is in play, you may use 1 muster or recruit faction die to bring the Dunlandings into play. All right, so let's see what the instructions are on the card. And the starting setup is 2 in North Dunland and 2 in South Dunland, and then we had 2 additional ones. So we'll do that. So we're going to place 2 in North Dunland, 2 in South Dunland, and we have 2 more, so I think we'll place 1 in each. Total of 3 there. And that is going to complete the Phase 5. Phase 6 is the victory check, and we're still where we were last time. 1 for the Shadow player and 2 victory points for the Free Peoples. We're ready for a new round. It's Phase 1, and we're going to collect our action dice. Now, the Galadriel die had a remove symbol. Gandalf the White is in play, so this dice is permanently removed from play. And the Free Peoples are going to be rolling 5 dice and a faction die. Shadow player will be rolling a total of 9 dice and faction die. Now, no movement of the Fellowship occurred last round, so Shadow player is not required to place any dice in the hunt pool if he chooses. Free Peoples draw their cards. They have Therin back again, Wisdom of Elrond, and we only need wings. We have a total of, this would make a total of 5 standard cards, but once again, we would be over on our hand limit for the faction cards, so we'll have to discard 1 of those. I think they're going to discard We Only Need Wings. Shadow player currently has a total of 3 standard events and 3 faction events, so he'll have no problem with hand limits. He'll have a total of 5 standard and 4 faction events. All right. And now it's the Fellowship phase, and the Fellowship is going to declare themselves. They have 2 progress points, and I'm going to use this as a way to get rid of or get out of the space with the Witch King and the Spider and the army that's searching for me. So we're going to move 2 spaces, and we're going to declare ourselves in the fold. You don't get to heal there because it's not a city or a fortress, but we've at least moved ourselves out of the area. So we'll remain hidden, and we're going to move our progress track back down to 0. We still have 4 on our corruption though. Next up is the hunt allocation phase. We'll roll on table A. Roll is a 12, and they're going to place 3 dice into the hunt box. Okay. Phase 4, the action roll. Free Peoples have 2 event dice, a muster army, Will of the West, and they have, I'll have to look that one up, I don't remember that symbol. And that's a play and draw faction event. All right. And now it's the Shadow player's roll. He ends up with 1 event, 4 character dice, a muster, and a recruit or play faction event, I believe. I'm going to look that symbol up again. And that is a recruit or play faction event, yes. All right, the Free Peoples player is going to play a muster die, and they're going to recruit a Gondor elite in Dal Amroth. So we'll place a Gondorian elite unit in Dal Amroth, and we'll move on to the Shadow player. Shadow player make a roll, and we'll find out where Sauron's gaze is at. Rolls a 7, and that's going to be Mordor, and that means the focus will be on Minas Tirith. All right, the Shadow player is going to use an event die, and they're going to play Denethor's Folly. Play on the table if Minas Tirith is under siege by a shadow army, which it is. When you play this card, immediately eliminate one Free People's leader in Minas Tirith. When Denethor's Folly is in play, the Free People's player cannot use combat cards for battles fought in Minas Tirith. The Free People's player can force Denethor's Folly to be discarded using a Will of the West action result or any action die if Gandalf or Aragorn is in Minas Tirith. Alright, so that card is going to remain in play. Now the forces in Minas Tirith are going to lose a leader, and that would leave only a single regular defending Minas Tirith. Now it's the Free People's player, and they're going to spend an event die and play the card Wisdom of Elrond. Activate one Free People's nation of your choice and advance that nation one step on the political track. Well, they're going to play this on Rohan. So that's going to activate Rohan and move them one step down the track. They're 2 steps away from at war. Okay. Shadow player's up next. We'll see where his focus is tuned. Roll is an 8, and that's going to be Umbar and Harad. Alright, I think the Shadow player is going to use a character die, and we're going to move minions. We're going to move 1 Nazgul from Minas Tirith, and we're going to move that to Far Harad. So that will allow us to maybe move that army up and get some reinforcements. In the same token, I think we are going to I'm going to need those there. I think we'll move 1 additional Nazgul from the Minas Tirith army, and we'll move that into the fold. So that'll give us a dice roll, re-roll for if there's any hunt action. So I think we'll do that. Free People's player is going to use a faction die, and they're going to play the faction card Saruman is a neighbor. Play on the table if Saruman is in play. Place 3 Ent figures on this card. When Shadow player uses Saruman's Voice of Saruman ability, recruit one of these figures in Fanghorn. You may use any faction die result to recruit one of these figures normally. You must immediately discard this card from the table as soon as there are no more figures on it. Okay, we'll place 3 Ents on that card, and then whenever Saruman uses that his voice ability, we'll be able to deploy one of those. Okay. Shadow player's up next, and he'll make his roll for the gaze. Roll is an 8, and that is Umbar and Harad. Okay. Alright, the Shadow player is going to play a character die, and they're going to activate this force in Far Harad and move that to near Harad. We need to get some reinforcements up here. Free People's player is going to use an action die, and they're going to play the card the Red Arrow. Play if Gondor Nation is active. Advance the Rohan Nation one step on the political track. Then recruit 1 Rohan unit, regular or elite, and 1 Rohan leader in Edoras. Okay. So Rohan is going to move 1 step closer to at war. And then we're going to place a Rohan elite and a Rohan leader in Edoras. Shadow player's up next, and he'll make his roll. He has a total of 3 standard action dice and 1 faction die. Roll is a 9, and that's going to be Isengard. Alright, Saruman is going to use his ability, the Voice of Saruman. He's going to play a muster die, and he's going to use his special ability to replace 2 regular Isengard units in Orthanc with 2 elites. So we are going to substitute 2 of those in Orthanc for 2 of the Wolf Riders, the elites. And now there's a card that is played called Saruman as a Neighbor, and whenever he uses his Voice of Saruman, they can deploy one of the Ents into Fanghorn Forest. So this is the third Ent now is being deployed. There's two others on the card. All right. All right, the Free People's player is going to use their Will of the West die, and we're going to play that as a character die, and we're going to move the Fellowship. That will advance the Fellowship token on the track to 1, and now the Shadow player will conduct his hunt. He has 3 dice in the box. Fellowship is currently in the fold, and there is a Nazgul in the space, so that would entitle them to 1 reroll. Okay, here's the roll. And they have a success. So they have successfully hunted. We're going to take the reroll and use that in case an eye comes up as a result. They did. They've got 2 successes, so they will be drawing 1 hunt tile, and we'll see what happens. Okay, here is the result of the hunt tile draw. And they have a Smeagol tile. It says when the player draws a Smeagol tile from the hunt pool, the damage is 0, and Smeagol enters play as a special companion, always serving as the guide of the Fellowship. Place the Smeagol character card in the guide of the Fellowship box and place the Smeagol companion counter with the other companion counters. Remove the drawn Smeagol tile from the game. All of Smeagol's special abilities are immediately applied. Note, Smeagol is not Gollum. Game events that require Gollum's presence or card effects that are modified if Gollum is in play are not affected by the presence of Smeagol. If Gollum enters play before Smeagol, or if Smeagol has already been in play and subsequently discarded, Smeagol is not played when a Smeagol tile is drawn. Discard the tile and draw another. Okay. So Smeagol is going to become the guide. We'll add his token and his model to the Fellowship box. So Smeagol has assumed the duty as the guide of the Fellowship. Shadow player is up next, and he'll make his roll on the gaze table. Roll is a 9, and that's going to be Isengard again. All right. All right, Saruman is going to use a character action die. He's going to activate his force in Orthanc, and he's going to attack Rohan in the Fords of Isen. All right, the Free Peoples have decided not to play a combat card at this time. And the Shadow player is going to roll to see if he plays one. He has a total of 4 standard cards, so on a 3 or less, he'll be playing a combat card. The roll is a 2, so he will play a combat card. Shadow player is going to play the card Fear of Their Masters. Play if a Shadow minion is in the battle. And in this case, Saruman commands. Forfeit your entire leadership to add 2 to all your dice in the combat roll. Each unmodified 6 on the Free People's player combat roll or leader reroll inflicts 1 additional hit on the Shadow army. Okay. Free Peoples were entitled to 1 leader reroll. They have a Rohan leader. We're forfeiting all of our leadership that we would have. And they'll be rolling a total of 5 combat dice, and they'll be rolling 3. Now all of Saruman's dice are going to be at +2 because they forfeited their leadership. Here's the roll. All right. It means that Saruman has inflicted a total of 3 hits. Rohan scored 1 hit, and they're entitled to a reroll. They failed that, so Saruman won 3-1. The entire force is wiped out. All of Rohan's forces are wiped out, and Saruman is going to lose 1 regular, and he has captured the Fords of Isen. Saruman is going to move his entire force into the Fords of Isen, but he's going to keep 1 regular behind as a garrison. We've got the Ents in Fanghorn that could be causing trouble at some point, and Saruman does not want to take a chance on them sliding in. So They're going to advance to the Fords of Isen. And that is going to push Rohan to the at war box. The Free Peoples player has a muster army die, and they're going to use that to recruit in Rohan. They're going to place one in Helm's Deep and one in Edoras. Shadow player's up next, and we'll make a roll. Rolls a 10, and his attention is turned to Mordor. And unfortunately, I moved out the Nazgul from the first army. Otherwise, I would have been able to use my character die and attack. So you won't be able to do that this turn. So I think what we'll do is we're going to use a recruit die, and we're going to recruit some spiders. And that's going to allow us to place one in Minas Morgul and one in Dal Guldur. All right, the Shadow player is down to his last die. He is going to play a character die to play the event card Nazgul Search. Play if the Fellowship is on step 1 or higher of the Fellowship track, which they are. Move any and all of the Nazgul. Then, if at least one Nazgul is in the region with the Fellowship is revealed. All right, we've already got a Nazgul in fold with the Fellowship, so we're going to be able to move our Nazgul, and that is going to reveal them. With this card, the Fellowship will be revealed. So we'll see if they're going to make any movements of Nazgul. And I think I'm going to move one Nazgul from Peligir to Minas Tirith, and that will give us the ability to at least use a character die to activate the army. And now the Fellowship is going to be revealed. So they have one movement point that they can spend, and I guess they will use that to move into the Druiden Forest. And with that, the Witch King has the ability, he knows that the Fellowship is declared in a region which is not unconquered, Free People's stronghold. You may move the Chief of the Ring Wraiths to the region containing the Ring Bearers, and that's what he's going to do. All right. And that's going to bring our Phase 5 to a close. Phase 6 is our victory check, and we're still at 1 for the Shadow player and 2 for the Free Peoples. All right, we're going to end the video here, and we're going to resume again with another video of War of the Ring and our Alone in Middle-earth rule set. Thanks so much for joining me, and we hope to see you soon again at the channel. Have a good evening.